Hey, it's Roy again. So excited to share this part two of the interview from Bridget Melton. Again, her questions are so spot on. It's so exciting to hear her perspective and how she interweaves her own experience into her questions. And hope you enjoy it.
So in the instance of these SAG Award screeners, that might not have been that level of involvement, but it's more just the production in general even realized this was a thing, let's get it created. How do you know anything about like how the awards were broadcast and with the AD on that?
If we could go back just
Hmm.
another second when it comes to the production, it's not production managing it. The production still was able to outsource it to an AD facility. I think what's notable is that production contacting the AD facility
Gotcha.
versus the distributor contacting the AD facility. And that's not unprecedented. There's other producers who have hired audio description facilities directly and not through the distribution. I just want to make that distinction. And then to your question about the actual live show, what was really fascinating and just lit me up, and it showed, again, complimenting the producers of SAG Awards, that when the requirement for audio description for all the screeners was agreed on, they said in the same conversation, probably the same sentence, and if we're doing it for the screeners, we need to do it for our own show.
Yes.
What's the best way to do that? Like, it was
Yes.
their idea. There's a sense of we want to be consistent. If we're requiring it for the screeners, we should require it for our show.
There's such a level of trust in that consistency. That is awesome. Do you know if any of the AD that was created for these screeners, did it stay with it since it was done by production or asked for by production instead of distribution? Did that AD get to have a life with that film? Did it stay tied to it, to those projects?
I know that those titles still do have audio description. Not only the screeners that came out, this
Hmm.
was like several years ago, and it's been consistent ever since. The requirement has remained. But those shows do have audio description according to the ADP.
Some.
Yeah. Audio
Okay.
Description Project, for those that don't know the acronym.
Yeah, one of the things that I was really struck by in reading the book is just when you are learning about, oh, the AD might not exist after this, or it's going to exist on the DVD version, but it doesn't exist in the streaming version, and which streamer. That is something that I do rely on the audio description project to help me, to point me in the direction of, I want to watch this show, but exactly where is it audio described? Because that would help a lot. This actually, the audio description project brings to mind also with like the ADNA.org, the notion of credits and how do I find exactly where something is described and who has described it and everything. In the chapter pivoting from how cheap to how great, you've got this great section on professionalism. Quote, professionalism is more than competence. For voice actors and others involved in crafting AD, it involves developing and honing specialized skills through ongoing study, coaching, and practice. It is the diligent pursuit of excellence. So, one thing that I've noticed that was not in the book is a mention of credentials or qualifications for AD, like there are in other accessibility professions, such as American Sign Language interpreting or real time captioning. What are some ways that you feel that VO artists, or anyone really, can demonstrate their professionalism in a quick and attention grabbing way so that they're noticed by the decision makers who may not be as invested in AD?
I love this. I love this so much, Bridget. I want to reframe the question a little bit, if I may. When we're talking about how cheap to how great, one of the reasons the ADNA was started, one of the many reasons, because there were many, is to give names to the writers, to the editors, to the quality control, to the directors, to the performers, to the many roles that are involved in this creation of audio description. To this day, I'm still asked, why did you write that when it comes to a film or a TV show? And with total gentleness and understanding and patience, I share I'm actually given a script that was written for me. And so letting people recognize there are audio description writers who are doing the bulk of the work here. I'm bringing the work to life, but they're doing the decision making, the nuance, the care, the discernment of what is the most important thing. That is all incredibly creative work. And by naming the name of who does that, that is a form of professionalism. I'm going to make a little stretch of an analogy here, and I'm not a sports ball person, but I'm going to try it with football. That my understanding is that once someone makes it to the NFL team, that they get in, and then all they have to do is show up and play games, and that's it. Obviously, that's not true. When they're working for a team, they are being coached, they are going to training, they're going to workouts, they're learning new approaches and strategies, they're collaborating with their teammates. This is not just showing up for the game. All the stuff that happens beforehand, during, and after the game is essential to doing the best game possible. And those are professionals in their field that once they quote unquote make it and they get the job being on the team, quarterback or something like that. Again, I don't know the sports ball terminology. That they are responsible for making sure that their body is in the best condition that they can be, that they're exercising, that they're getting the coaching that they need, that they're listening to the coach, that they're collaborating with the other teammates. All of these things are professionalism. And my understanding is that when someone gets into that position of being on an NFL team, they didn't take something like an SAT question answer test, that they don't do a fill in the blank, ABCD, multiple choice to be able to qualify, that they have proven themselves through their work, through their outreach, through being observed in the college teams. That kind of analogy, if you can find the parts that work, baby with the bathwater here, that there's a lot to be said for professionalism that doesn't have a checkbox. The entire book is all about A Voice Actor's Guide to Audio Description Performance is saying we need to do more than just check the box. So I am going to very gently, and thankfully there are people that are making requirements and standards for audio description at large. That's great. When it comes to media, entertainment, when it comes to storytelling, when it comes to characters, there's something that's really special about recognizing the subjectivity, that I could be given a 90-page script of a film and another 90-page script of a film, and one could be a horror genre, one could be a lighthearted comedy, another could be a kid's show. There's so many different variables that go into media, and I think it's important to really, again, focus on the creditors. And to, as I've danced around your question for 6 minutes, what is important is to outreach and to share this, because it builds awareness and it also builds credibility and it also builds professionalism of, hey, look at this.
Yeah, I did have quite a laugh when I was reading it. Just the notion that so much of our work in the audio description field is uncredited, and it's shifting, but so much of it is uncredited that I was laughing in a moment. You were talking about how varying pay rates are for this. And that there's the big pull of like, oh, but if I can be on this high profile show, if I can be connected to it, then there's a lot of cachet with that. And I definitely in my career have greatly benefited from being attached to some high profile projects, but it's like you have to network them very covertly because you've signed this NDAs. There are no bragging rights. And how do you get to brag and get that cachet when you're like, but I can't really talk about the fact that I was involved in that project. And I am hopeful that is changing a lot more, at least with the companies that I'm choosing to work with. It's like, yes, you are going to credit us. Awesome.
I believe Netflix has that requirement.
Nice.
And I'm not sure about other companies, but it's the last I checked, and we've been on this interview now for a little over half an hour, so things may have changed since we started talking. But there are certain aspects of that Netflix, it's publicly available. You can see the requirements for audio description include crediting the writer and crediting the performer.
Nice. Yeah, that was one of those changes that I was like, I'm excited to see that those things are being pushed forward because they're so small, but they have such an impact on the professionalism of the career. Because if you can't talk about it, then you might as well, how can I put this on my resume? If is anybody going to believe me kind of thing.
And that's where the ADNA comes in. I mean,
Yes.
The original founding of that was to give credits so that we could start distinguishing for our audience and for others. Hey, here's what's happening. It is a audiences can contribute. It's not necessarily the performer or the writer who's contributing.
I do really like that. You can kind of crowdsource those things because there's always going to be that performer's voice where you go, I know them. I've heard them do such and such, and maybe you remember them from one show, and then now you're listening to them in this new one. Hopefully, if you don't know their name, if they are uncredited, you can go onto the ADNA.org, search it up, and then submit that. I agree. In the conclusion of the book, let's connect, shall we? There's this great learning moment about how Netflix had changed their style guide, as you mentioned, to include those audible credits. You seem positive that, quote, AD credits will become the norm, not the exception, and I agree. You end this section with, quote, as this work gains recognition, I'm hoping that we'll make other gains as well in resources allocated, in skills developed, in careers built, and most of all, in audiences reached. So I confess to wanting to know more about what some of your craziest dreams for norms are. How far-reaching or might they go? Is this just that you're hoping like for a different rate? Is there a new union? What are some of your crazy wishes?
I'm really excited about how technology and access are changing. And so to answer your question explicitly, I think there's and this is something that I've been pitching for several years now, in the same way that live theater has an introduction of the stage set, of the costumes, of the characters to get blind people acclimated. There were a handful of interviews that I did along those same lines with audio description writers, where I interviewed them and said, you didn't have time to be able to share this incredible world. Can you share some specifics? And I invited a blind audience member who was a fan of the show to have this conversation. And so people could witness, look at all these things that we didn't have time to share, and it makes the story come alive. I have been trying to do this, and I will continue to do this, that feels like a win-win for everyone, to be able to get the audiences to understand more about audio description, to allow the writer to peel back the curtain and say, oh my gosh, I wish I could have described this. I had the right language, I just didn't have the time. That enemy of time comes up again and again in the book. That producers would recognize, look at this audience that we're not even acknowledging, that is incredibly loyal, who have friends and family members who want to join in the experience. Let's give them even more. Let's get them invested in this brand that we've created and that we've invested as a producer of this film or TV show so much energy and time in, and let's include them even more. That is a huge dream. And then on the, I think on the personal front, and I'm continuing to do this, is the coaching of voice talents, and also branching out into some other areas outside of voice where blind professionals can have the opportunities that sighted people get. I'm not sure about your experience, Bridget, but my career was built through other friends of mine who were peers. It didn't come necessarily through casting directors or producers. It came through the opportunities and network of my cohorts, my peers, the other voiceover talents who, hey, Roy, I just heard about this opportunity. I can't do it. You'd be perfect for it. Or me saying, oh my God, you'd be so great for this. Here's this person. That I am now vouching for others, and the rising tide lifts all ships. When our blind professionals have that kind of access, it helps include them in something that they've been excluded for so long.
That was actually one of the great little tips you had mentioned for how to be an ally, was start with, did you describe the graphic or the job post that you've just been sharing? That would go a long ways. A lot of times people are sharing on social media or LinkedIn just a screen grab of something. And it's like, tell me what the screen grab is. I absolutely agree. There's so much in this industry is the networking and the lifting of other voices when yours is not the right voice. There's enough work to go around. I think the book makes that abundantly clear. There are enough titles for everyone. You don't have to accept everything. One of the things that really struck me that I feel like I am personally struggling with a lot right now is you had mentioned the standardization. And not necessarily the standardization of what the how to get to the end product, but just the sheer volume in the freelancer's world, the sheer volume of systems you have to learn and workflows that you have to learn for each individual company. And you touched on it some in the book. And to me, it was just this very moving moment of now put yourself in the blind professional's eyes or the low vision professional's eyes, where they're constantly having to say, no, I can do this workflow. Just give me the tools, because I know exactly how to work the tools. You just have to make sure that I have them. All of those simple steps that we could take to support everybody. I know that I personally have been working to make a shift from saying, if anybody needs accommodations, to just, what tools do you need to excel at this? How can I make this the most efficient for you? Because, I personally, I do not have a disability. And so to me, if somebody says an accommodation to me, I'm like, oh, but I don't need those. I can't take away. But an accommodation can be as simple as, can I just do it on the software I have? And do you just want it as a WAV file? Awesome. We don't need to talk anymore. Just tell me that you need a WAV file and we're done. Yeah, I really love that you brought that into it, because, standardization of systems would be so nice, because that's never taken into account in your rate, that you now have to learn a different workflow because you're working for this company this week instead of that company.
One thing that I think is coming up for me when you're sharing that is back to that silo mentality. I'm finding that let's make a comparison to post-production, that there is a community of post-production sound people who work together and collaborate, and there's not an official standardization, but there is a lot of, hey, try this. Oh my gosh, that saves me half an hour. Those kinds of things, let's use the term crowdsource again, professional source. We kind of professional source together. That, as you said in audio description currently, that there are so many different silos, even within one company, that one person doesn't necessarily know what the other roles are. And as that becomes more, I don't want to say exposed, because that's not the word I'm looking for, anti-siloed. And the silo is basically, it's isolated. You're stuck in your department, let's say, and you don't go outside of it. Once those silos start breaking down, even among different audio description facilities, then there's some workflows that could really support each other and start cutting back on some of these extra challenges that seem currently unnecessary.
Yeah, a really simple thing is 2 companies I work for, they have a depository of all of the ways logos can be described. And it's like, thank you, because as a writer, credits are like the bane of our existence. They take hours to write, and they shouldn't, but you're having to transcribe things and pick and choose, is this going to work here? Is this not going to work here? And there's so many rules to credits that, simple things like, please just tell me how this production company wants their logo described. Awesome. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. Kind of shifting gears, another thing that was exciting to me in your bio at the end of the book, I was totally blown away by some of the things that you have accomplished or been involved in. We've already talked about your role in the audio description for SAG Awards screeners, but you mentioned that you served on the TV Academy Performers Peer Group Executive Committee, quite a mouthful, leading the initiative to include AD performers' credits for Emmy eligibility. Unpack that for us, for those of us that just are not aware of what that means. What is the significance of this, not only for performers, but also the AD audiences?
Sure. The Television Academy is the home of the Primetime Emmys. So if you've heard of Emmy Awards, that's the Television Academy.
Okay.
To join the Television Academy, they have rules of having to qualify credits. And I was honored to be joining the Television Academy, thanks to Lily Tomlin and Bob Bergen, and be able to use my credits outside of audio description to join. Once I joined, I had the opportunity to be part of the executive committee of the Performers Peer Group. And that means that a bunch of us performers would meet with the governors of our specific peer group, the performers, and share ideas. How can we help build our industry up? What does professionalism mean? How can we help support the excellence of our fellow peers? And one of the ways that I was advocating for is to get audio description performers to be able to qualify their credits to be able to join the Television Academy. In the context of including people with disabilities, this seemed like a really effective ask. By including audio description performers' credits for television shows to qualify, meant that we could now have yet another avenue for blind professionals to be able to join this organization. In the same way that performers with disabilities in SAG-AFTRA were able to get done what they got done with SAG Awards, I saw another parallel for blind professionals to be able to influence the Television Academy and to get those blind professionals to access at the table at the Television Academy. They needed a way to be able to join. And since audio description was created by blind people for blind people and blind people work in it, those blind professionals seemed like a really great, easy win for everyone involved. The Television Academy, for the performers, group at large, for the blind performers, and for audio description performers. So it took 6 years. And each time, if I could share a quick little anecdote, I prepared a 10-minute, pretty compelling, evidence-based share speech, whatever you want to call it, to present to the performers' peer group about why audio description performers should be included to join the Television Academy. That's to join. And the way I was introduced...
I know. What a tease. The final part of this interview will be coming soon. Thanks so much for tuning in.